Hey guys, welcome to my brother's ballad. I'm your boy Poe Theory. So we just got to 500 subscribers. Thank you guys so much for subscribing to the channel and really rocking with your boy. Now that means we only need 500 more subscribers to reach our 1,000 goal. So please be one of the first 1,000 to subscribe to my lovely channel. Even if you dislike me and you just like commenting mean things, do it. I engage. But anywho, as we all know, I love watching Abby Phillip's News Night, and the panel started to discuss what has been happening in Chicago when it comes to ICE. So let's get into it.
Of military might on American streets. We are learning more about the ICE raid on this apartment building in Chicago where federal agents stormed it in the dead of night. Black Hawk helicopters and military-style trucks, flashbangs. Witnesses say everyone in the building was detained, including U.S. citizens. Others saw children zip-tied together, and some separated from their parents. Now, one witness told CNN, "I've been on military bases for a good portion of my life, and the activity I saw, it was an invasion." Now, the administration says it targeted and arrested dozens of gang members as the White House celebrates the operation across the city. Another scene, witnesses say that masked men threw chemical agents at people from this car. You can see it there. Now, CNN has not been able to verify who exactly they were, but lawmakers say that while it's not clear if they were agents, they were asking about citizenship status.
So no one thinks that this is crazy. No one thinks that this is crazy that this is happening on the streets of America. Those on the left said that this would happen, and those on the right told us that it would not. And I know Scott Jennings is on this panel, and I can't wait to see how he justifies American citizens being woken up in the middle of the night in an American city by a federal agency. But they're the party of freedom.
Status and detained multiple people. Now, also in the administration's crosshairs is Portland, Oregon. Once again, after a MAGA influencer was arrested during a scuffle outside of an ICE facility, this is what they had to say.
The president has directed Secretary Hegseth to provide all necessary troops to protect war-ravaged Portland and any ICE facilities under siege from attack by Antifa and other left-wing domestic terrorists.
We're sending in the Department of War at the request that I made to Secretary Hegseth. They're going to be rolling in here within the next 24 hours. Wow. What we saw happen to that journalist last night will not happen again.
Now, all of this comes just days after President Trump told the military that he wants American cities to be their training grounds. And it seems like, Alencia, they're getting ready to carry out that promise. Yeah, I mean, how does that work, Scott? I mean, all of a sudden, obviously, journalists shouldn't be arrested, but this is not the first time, even in the last few months, that journalists have been arrested at protests. And it seems that in this particular instance, he was in a physical altercation with protesters.
To make it very clear, this administration is using these very singular instances to essentially give allowance for the National Guard and ICE to go into these cities. It was the young MAGA staffer that was beat up in DC. Now the National Guard is in DC. Now it is this right-leaning reporter, I'm assuming, got into it with protesters, and now this is the reason why they want to go into Portland. It's crazy.
With protesters. And so everybody was arrested. So now all of a sudden that's a predicate for bringing the military into Portland?
Well, no, the predicate is that Portland has been occupied by Antifa for quite some time. You guys keep calling them protests. These aren't protests. These are violent people. They're attacking law enforcement. They're attacking federal facilities. The President of the United States has every obligation.
I would also like to highlight Scott Jennings wearing the yellow ribbon that signifies the hostages that he wants to bring back that Hamas still has. So for him to use the word occupy is just disgusting.
Has every obligation to defend federal facilities and federal personnel there. I agree with you. It is a disgrace. It's a disgrace that we have an American city that is essentially being occupied by left-wing radicals, and the locals won't do anything about it. And so now the president...
Exaggeration of what's
it
happening
is not
in
an
Portland.
exaggeration.
I mean,
I see the video.
By local officials has been described as something that's essentially happening in one city block of Portland.
They are
Portland
assaulting the ICE facilities. They are assaulting the ICE agents.
Is a city, and it's not a perfect city, but it is a city. and something occurring in one city block is suddenly Portland is war ravaged.
Do you dispute that they've attacked the ICE facility?
I didn't say anything about that. I said that it's happening in one block of the city.
Is that
so?
How many blocks is it?
Does that constitute Portland being a war ravaged city?
I think what's happened in Portland is a disgrace. Nobody wants to go there. And yes, parts of the city are ravaged by these protesters. And federal officials
a city as being
believe their facilities are under attack.
Even when there are violent protests, which, by the way, nothing new about violent protests, as you know.
So it's not new, so we should let it go.
When violent protests happen.
Well, January 6th was an extremely violent protest. We all have it on camera, and the man that you support pardoned every single one of them. So by that logic, yeah, we should let it go.
When violent protests happen, law enforcement has a responsibility to handle it, but would you describe an entire city as war ravaged when there are protests, even if they're violent, that's happening outside of a single building?
Yes, I would say if there are violent protests happening against a federal facility, they are being ravaged. I completely agree with that language.
Okay, all right.
Portland isn't a war-ravaged city. I think political spin is a part of ginnying up everything that you need to do to execute whatever agenda that you have. I mean, the president said that he feels like American cities can be training grounds for the military. Anyone who halfway cares about the freedom of the average America, that should have a chilling effect on you, that a president would say that. It's so far beyond the pale of what we would have accepted in past decades and times of a norm for a commander-in-chief. It's absurd. It's interesting here that everybody was arrested and they're honing in on this one guy. The underlying, I guess, lesson that I get from that is kind of the lesson I get from MAGA, is that they get to choose which Americans matter insofar as who we should care about gets arrested, who we should care about is treated fairly. And when one of their own gets treated that way, then we have to send in the military. All of this stuff is...
That's exactly right. And in my viewpoint, this is why the Democrats are woefully unprepared to be a resistance party. Throw out the norms. These are not regular people. These are not regular politicians that you need to deal with or interact with or try to come to the table on. They don't care. They don't want to work with you. Learn how to fight, because at this point, they're going to ruin this country. Republicans and conservatives have always been about freedom. There is nothing about this government and everything that it is doing that is providing a higher level or more freedom in this country. It's not.
Stuff is a part and parcel of what we've been seeing going on. And if we don't have the courage and the actual gumption to stand up to it, it's just going to get worse.
Well, I would kind of push back on the idea that Donald Trump is, acting unprecedented. I remember when Tim Walz sent the National Guard down the streets in Minnesota telling people to stay inside their houses. I mean, that was militarization. But to the point of who is getting targeted here, look, Katie Davis Court is an independent reporter. She was attacked this week in Portland. She has a huge black eye. Her attacker was not arrested, right? Nick Sorter, according to the video footage that is online, it appears that he was being harassed and targeted by these violent agitators, and they were not held accountable at all for threatening him, for seemingly agitating the situation to a degree, and he was. And the Portland police have not come out yet with any kind of information to give us any indication why they made that arrest.
Are you, I want to make sure I'm not confusing incidents, but you're suggesting that the people that he was in an altercation with were not arrested. They were arrested. They were all arrested according to the Portland PD.
Right,
and in fact, there were arrests that were made by federal agencies in the same scuffle. Federal police officers made arrests of protesters and anti-protesters who were in altercations. So the idea that this is Portland PD just being,
And I would also like to highlight another hypocrisy as to why these people are not rational or serious people. Well, no, they're very serious in their agenda, but in terms of being serious politicians and actually trying to help the American people, some days they love the police, some days they hate the police. It just depends on who the police is dealing with at that moment. If it's a red shirt, they hate the police. If it's a blue shirt that they're dealing with, they love the police.
Just being, targeting pro-MAGA voices is just not true.
Right, but the larger point of this, and to Scott's earlier point, this has been going on, especially this past week. We have seen violent agitators there, and they have not arrested other violent agitators who have thrown things at federal law enforcement, who have attacked a federal building. So when they do go after Nick Sorter, it makes you wonder.
I guess the thing is,
but it makes you wonder, what have they been doing all week with these violent agitators?
I'm trying to understand what you're saying, because it's not true that they have not been arrested. There have been arrests. There have been many arrests over the last few days. The press releases have been sent out by both the federal officials and by local officials. There have been arrests. But I mean, is the concern about, police aggression against journalists? Because there was a journalist just in the last week who had ICE officials shooting, non-live ammunition at their vehicle when they were in a clearly marked press vehicle. That also happened. I heard nothing about that. I mean, there were journalists arrested in Los Angeles during those protests. Nothing about that. I mean, why?
Well,
why
I think the what?
I don't know if you guys caught it. When Abby is rightly pointing out this young woman's hypocrisy, do you see how she doesn't even try to answer and she looks to Scott to help and save her? Just hoping someone jumps in so she doesn't have to answer to her hypocrisy. These people are jokes.
Do you believe there's a difference between dissent and protest or violence?
I do, but
Okay,
what I'm saying.
And do you agree there's been violence in Portland?
Can I ask you guys a question, just real quick? Do you guys think that there's a difference between dissent and protest and violence?
Of course,
Yes.
but what's
So
happening
can
in
I ask you-
Portland
so can I
is
ask you-
violent. It
so
is
can I ask you a
absolutely
question?
violent.
So can I ask you a question? Would you guys be in favor of, say, pardoning people who were engaged in violent protests and broke windows and stormed into things and beat up police officers? What would you think about a leader that would do? What would you think about want to hang the vice president? What would you think about a president that did?
No,
something
I didn't agree with pardoning people who committed violent actions.
Okay, so then what I'm saying is, there you have it. What you have here is a clear blueprint of what we're talking about. You have
Exactly. Thank you, Van. They have no foot to stand on. But again, I will always go back to this. They don't care. Hypocrisy is the point. Being a hypocrite, good for me, but not for thee, is a core tenet of fascism. Let's be very clear about that. They don't care. These people have no shame. And the longer that the left, more so establishment Democrats, wait for these people to have shame, the worse this country becomes.
what we're talking about. You have a double standard in the way that this is looked. On the one hand, you have violent people that attack the seat of power in the United States of America. And not only are they pardoned, they are celebrated.
But they did go to jail.
And then they are celebrated by your side when you guys get power.
They did go to jail.
And
They went to jail, but under whose Justice Department? Under whose Justice Department? Under Biden's Justice Department, not under Trump. And when Trump got back in, Trump pardoned them.
About it. Caroline Levitt also saying that in addition to, I guess, bringing in the troops to Portland, they're going to use the federal government to pull money from the city. Listen to this.
I just spoke with the president about this, and he has directed his team here at the White House to begin reviewing aid that can potentially be cut in Portland. We will not fund states that allow anarchy. There will also be an additional surge of federal resources to Portland immediately, including enhanced CBP and ICE resources. Law and order will prevail, and President Trump will make sure of it.
You know, one of the interesting things about this is the use of ICE and CBP as the vehicle for their desire to crack down on Democratic-led cities. Now, I mean, obviously there's ICE enforcement that has to happen in the country, but you can hear her saying there that, in her view, the failure to deal with protests outside of a federal building means that they're going to send in more immigration enforcement agents. It just feels like this has just become a way for the administration to use immigration agents as their personal police force, a federal police force, which, by the way, is not the way that they're supposed to be used.
Well, they are federal law enforcement, and to the extent that you have illegal immigration activity or attacks on ICE facilities in a city, the federal government has to enforce the law and defend their property. This didn't start in Portland a few days ago. This has been going on and on and on for years, why does a major American city get to exist in a state of anarchy, even if it's not the entire city, even if it's just a block, however big it is? Why does that get to be perpetuated? Why is that okay? Why are we accepting this decline in America?
I'm not understanding.
I don't think anyone's okay with that. And I hate the premise of the question because they should push back on the premise of that question. It's not that it's okay. The issue is how you respond to it. This is not how we respond to things in America.
Why all of a sudden this form of anarchy is so different from, say, high crime in, southern cities that are Republican states. That doesn't rise
with
to
Democrat mayors?
Maybe.
No, definitely.
Maybe. But I'm just saying, listen, we have a federalized system in this country where states get to run their own states. All of a sudden, that's not acceptable to you.
It's not acceptable for local officials to allow anarchy where federal buildings are under attack. And regarding southern cities, they've been in Memphis all week. And by the way, it's working. They've arrested hundreds of people, illegal guns, people with serious violence in their background. They've made immigration arrests. It's working in Chicago, over 1,000 arrests this week. They're not singling out Portland. They're going after any city.
To those that are watching, I would like to make sure you understand what he just said. He says it's working because they are making a lot of arrests. You can make 1,000 arrests. It doesn't mean that they're going to be convicted. It doesn't mean that they're going to be deported. It doesn't mean anything. They just arrested people. That's it. They still have to have their due process.
It's a place that I didn't think I was actually going to have to be in when we live in the United States. And I think about, you mentioned Chicago, just the scene of children being torn from their homes in the middle of the night because of this over-militarization of a community. And just to think of the trauma and what that's going to do for the next generations to come.
It's terrible when the children of Tren de Aragua are having to be separated.
I know the children argument doesn't work for Republicans because it never has.
Violent situations.
But I actually
we don't actually know. First of all, we don't know who those children were, but I imagine that there were other children who were not.
There were a lot of black
affiliated
children
with any of
who were
the
unaffiliated.
plenty of kids who were not affiliated.
Black children, black people who were ripped from their homes and detained
for hours,
with no warrants, for hours,
yeah, but
traumatized. Detain what?
Detain what?
First of all, detain is not the same as arrest. Second
How
of all,
would you like?
What bothers me so much about this woman, the hubris to say, well, detain is not the same as arrest. I would love to see her be detained. I would love to see her life be inconvenienced in the middle of the night because of her neighbors. I'm very curious how she would respond. But again, good for me, but not for thee. How dare, she's disgusting.
How would you like to be detained sitting outside of your home?
Wait. Why don't we go over what standard procedures are? When immigration officials and federal authorities are entering a hostile situation where there are known criminals and known members of a terrorist organization, they have to go in and detain. Yes. And when you're going in there.
When she says a hostile environment, it's an apartment building. I live in an apartment building. If someone on the other end of the building has a warrant out for their arrest, that means the police can come in to my apartment and remove me and detain me just because I live near him, just because I live near the criminal. She thinks that this is okay.
Yes. And when you're going in there to,
I just want to be clear that what you're talking about, because we talked about this at the beginning. Children zip tied, okay?
By the way, DHS disputes that. They dispute it.
We can't believe everything.
Hold on a second.
I called them. We talked about this afternoon. I called them. I said point blank. What about this? They said that did not happen. They did say this.
Of course they're going to say that.
Hold on. What did they say did not happen?
They said this did not happen. But oftentimes and every time when they go into a situation with violent people, the first thing they do is remove children from a dangerous situation, and they're not in the care of DHS. They immediately go into the care of DHS.
So let me just make one note, because we received a statement from them where they talked about.
I would like to make it very clear that there are photos, and I'm going to put one in here, of a black child being zip tied in Chicago in the middle of the night.
How they were separating children who might have been associated with some of the people who were arrested for gang affiliations, but we also don't know if those are the same children that these witnesses were talking about. I mean, The witnesses said that they saw children crying. They looked distraught. They were out there crying. I saw a little girl come around the corner because they were bringing the kids down too and had them zip tied to each other. So
They
this
dispute it. They dispute it. I'm just telling you. I call them.
I understand that they dispute that. I'm just saying this person was there and this is what they say, so people can make of that what they
just
will.
the horrors of what happened to the children is one thing. You also had American citizens, black
Yes.
American citizens that were drugged out of their homes and detained and put through something that they should not have had to go through. And when we are having a conversation about how customary it is to detain someone, I want people to remember the historic implications of that for black people.
Okay, hold on. Wait, what would be? Wait, let me ask you honestly. What would be the alternative to go in there and say, okay, guys, raise your hand if you are an American citizen, and we're going to let you out of here. Do you trust people to be honest? Like, is that the alternative? Is that the alternative?
No, yeah, the alternative is for law enforcement to do their job.
Yes,
and
that's
make
what
sure
they're
that
doing.
They are detaining the right people.
And how do they detain? How do they determine that? They have to see the papers.
The alternative is for law.
They have to see your papers. Everyone that is currently watching this video right now, if you're walking down the street and someone jumps out of a car on you with a mask and they ask you for your papers, other than your driver's license or your identification card, are you walking around with your social security number? Are you walking around with your birth certificate? How could you prove it? I would love to know. How would you prove it? So for this woman to try to justify that and say that these people, oh, no, the law enforcement is just doing their job. Show me your papers.
When you walk down the street and so let's say hypothetically a law enforcement person came up to you and said, are you a U.S. citizen? What are you going to say?
Well, that's not the question.
No, let me ask you.
No,
if they said that to you, what would you say?
I would say yes.
Okay, and then they said, I don't believe you. Let me put you in some zip ties.
You know what the difference is? When they're going into a hostile situation.
No, hold on a second.
Abby, you're
no, hold on a second.
People are 37 illegal aliens
out of hundreds of people.
People live, man.
Listen, I think that I'm just playing out the scenario.
They didn't bust the crack house.
But the scenario I'm describing is
Brianna, you just described the scenario.
Yes, and
in which they say that their only choice is to detain someone, make them not free to go, take away their freedom for however long, so that they can prove, not to take your word for it, but to prove that they are citizens. And if that happened to you, walking down the streets of New York, you would probably file a lawsuit, would you not?
Abby, you are completely taking what
I need her to answer that question. What would you do if that happened to you, sweets? What would you do? And that's why she doesn't want you to answer the question, because it's okay for it to happen to the black Americans, but it can never be okay for someone that looks like her.
you are completely taking what I said out of context. So I will say it again. When a law enforcement official is going into a situation or an environment in which they know that there are criminal gang members in a confined environment in an apartment complex.
We have to go.
And in an apartment complex.
I don't know if you guys pay attention, but whenever Scott is partnered with this girl, he just allows her to flounder. I don't know if you caught it, but there was a part where he kept saying, Abby, as this woman was talking, because he understands that she makes what's happening worse. She can't spin how Scott does it. Brianna is, I will say this, keep her up there because she shows what's truly happening, because she can't hide it. She's a disgusting human being, and I'm not a fan. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. And again, please subscribe. Be one of the first 1,000 people to come along this journey with me. Peace.